Thank you for joining us on Worldwide Slot Car Chat on Zoom, number 108. And I'm your host, Greg Gaub. Got a great group of people here. We got Tony and John and Mike and Lloyd and Don and Alan and Peter and John and Chuck and Dennis and Leo and Alan and Chris, who has his video active but a camera that's turned off or something, and Jeremy and Martin and other people. And we're going to talk about slot cars. I want to start off by saying that, or reiterating, because I've said this before, that this is Worldwide Slot Car Chat. This is not Worldwide 132nd Plastic Car Chat or 124th Brass Chassis Chat or whatever. This is anything slot cars of any scale, of any type whatsoever. Yes, a lot of us are in the 132nd and maybe a little bit of other stuff here and there. I would love it if you're an HO guy, come in and share your HO stuff. If you're a 143rd guy, come in and share that. If you're a speed crazed moron driving those 124th, group 12s and those other crazy, 2-second, 150-foot lap car, come on and join us and share your expertise. People will have lots of questions for you, I'm sure, and we'll have a lot of fun. To that end, we're going to start today's chat off a little bit differently. We're going to do a spotlight on 143rd. Most people know the scale of 143rd through products like Carrera Go or SCX Compact or some of the new stuff from Ninco. What I want to do with this spotlight is make sure that people out there truly understand that every single scale can encompass the breadth of every other scale's breadth, right? So you've seen 132nd cars that are blobs on steel chassis and scale cars on plastic chassis and everything in between. The same is true for 143rd, the same is true for HO, the same is true for 124th. And so today we're going to have some fantastic examples from some of our 143rd experts that participate in this chat, as well as the 143rd specific chat that takes place on Monday afternoons around noon my time, which they are absolutely welcoming to anybody who's interested in learning more about 143rd. But right now what we're going to do is showcase 143rd. And to start things off, I was sent a bunch of photographs from a couple of people so that I could do the screen share. Alan, if it's okay, I'm going to start with your pictures, and they're not in when I put them into my album, they didn't go in the same order that you sent them. So I'm just going to start with one, and you're just going to tell us what we're looking at, and then field any questions. All right? Okay. So check your mic real quick. Want to make sure we can hear you.
Okay, everybody hear me?
Good to go. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And nope, that's not that screen. There we go. And switch to a different tab. And I can't switch to the tab because it's blocking my thing. Okay, let me stop that. Apparently I gotta switch to the correct tab first because I can't click the tab because Zoom is over top of the tab. Okay, here we go. Photo number 1. What are we looking at?
I don't even know, to be honest with you, Greg, what particular car that is. Somebody can probably answer that, but that is
a Ferrari, yeah. Channel.
Okay, that's a 143rd scale 3D printed body.
Nice.
And that's on a resin printer, right?
That is on a resin printer, yes. It took approximately 3 hours to print.
Wow.
And is that just standard resin, or is it like ABS-like or anything particular that you use?
That's a standard resin there. And since then, I've moved over. I don't know what the particular brand is, but it gives you a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what the name of it is. I can post that later and let everybody know. But again, it took about 3 hours to print. And what I like about, and what I've done with my 3D printing, is when I design these, I design them in full scale. And for some reason, a lot of people didn't clue on that they were complaining that they would design their car or buy a file, let's say for 1/32, and they decided they would want to shrink it down to 1/64. Well, the trouble that you get into there is the walls become very, very thin. And in many, many cases, they won't, it won't print properly. So I learned very quickly that by designing in full scale, that allows me to use that as my master file. From there, I next will scale it down to any scale that I want to do. Once it's scaled down, then I hollow it out to the specific thickness of the walls that I would like. It's a very simple sequence, but allows me to take that master file and essentially print any size I want to. Someday, if I have a full-size printer, I'll print one of those in full scale.
When you say full scale, are you talking really 1-to-1?
I'm talking 1-to-1. Yes. That particular car right there, if my memory serves me correctly, is something like 4,430 millimeters long.
So 4.4 meters.
Yeah.
I love metric.
To me, that's one of the things that I just kind of picked up on real quick. And again, it gives me the flexibility that, hey, if somebody wants it in 1/32 scale, I can print it in 1/32 and don't have to be concerned about the thickness and the durability of the walls.
Yeah, that's ingenious. What are we looking at here?
Again, that's another 1/43. Guys, you're going to have to help me out. I can't remember what the heck they are.
That's a Lola T310.
A Lotus what?
Lola?
Lola.
The Lola. Okay.
Lola T310.
Right. And that is, I wish I would have taken a better shot of this on the side, but the height of that body, that car, the prototype itself, is not very high at all.
No, it's it was a very, very long and flat car.
Yeah.
David
And
Hobbs had nothing good to say about that car.
the motor that I'm going to be putting in is one of those little N20s, which is about half the size of an FF030.
Wow.
Real tiny little can. And again, help me out, guys.
Ferrari 312P.
Okay. Again, 1/43 scale.
Nice.
Now that I recognize as my cheetah.
That's a cheetah.
One of my favorite little rides. There's a guy that lives down the street from us has, I don't know what you want to call it, a repop or whatever, but it was a kit car that he built.
Replica.
Nice.
And he terrorizes the neighborhood every once in a while. There's a little Capri.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a GT40 version 4.
Mark 4, okay.
And I wanted to point out that guys have been doing some reading that a lot of times you'll see what is called banding or layering.
Yep.
Well, that can also happen in rosin printing if you don't have it oriented right. But fear not, with one or two simple coats of Tamiya primer, that blends in beautifully. That's what's on there is Tamiya primer right now. When I go ahead and put the top coat on there, you will not see those marks.
Alan, when you make that, do you have to come back into your like wheel wells and sand them down, or is the printing that precise?
It depends on the location of the little supports. Now, what I have learned is that most of your applications, as far as supports are concerned, you got like a small, a medium, and a large. And what I have found is if I use the small and the medium, they don't adhere to the build plate. And consequently, you get a failure in your print. So what I do is I use the large support but I modify that support. I go up to the very tip and I use the small or medium sized tip. And then I have no failures from there. And those supports, what I have also found out is that after I take it out of the printer and I put it through an alcohol bath, the next thing that I do is I take it over to my deep sink, and with hot water and soap and a soft old time shaving brush, you know, the old ones that the barbers used to use, I scrub that down. And then because it's still relatively soft, especially the points of the supports, they just pop right off and they leave very, very little in the way of a mark. Porsche 911, 62 Corvette, 63 Corvette, split window. And this is a lead in to something that we'll see here shortly. This is what I call my extender. And I designed this primarily for the inexpensive little Arton slot cars, the little 143rd Artons. And we can lead into the next. There's a 55 Chevy. That's a rosin body that I made the mold for. And there is the example of the bottom of a standard Arton chassis. Now, before I came up with the idea for my chassis extension, you can see there that I used a piece of aluminum tubing, 2 pieces of plastic, and put kind of like a freestanding front axle. Well, that little extender that I designed now slides into where you can see the 3 holes where the axle used to be. Well, that extender slides into there, and with a 440 nut and bolt on each side, you can now extend out the length of that inexpensive Arton chassis very, very easily.
Very nice.
Nice. What do you do about the guide, though? Does the pins stay in the same place?
Well, it depends on the track that I'm running at. Okay, now as far as the extender is concerned, there is a place to put the guide.
Oh, okay.
So you can move the pin up. But that brings up another point that how this all started is I was doing HO. Yeah, you can't see it right here, but there's a little hole there for it. I started out HO. I do HO 143 and 132nd. To me, a slot car is a slot car. It's got a chassis, got wheels, got motors, and has fun. So I do all the scales. But I was doing some HO drag racing before, and I had put invested in a continuous rail drag strip for HO. And I was enjoying that very, very much. And I got to wondering, I said, geez, I wonder if I could run these 143rds on there. And by simply taking the pin, shaving it down a little bit, or the guide flag, you would be surprised how well these 143rds run on that 164th continuous rail track. So to me, it's the best of both worlds. I can run HO, I can run my 143rd.
Pete, did you have a question for Alan?
Yeah, just a general question about 143rd scale. And I know the Arton chassis is a standard chassis with a standard wheelbase, but all the other manufacturers, do they have their own standard chassis with a wheelbase, or is there some variation in the wheelbase between models for any given manufacturer?
Some of the other guys may be able to answer that. I know Go, his, which is the Carrera, they seem to have a somewhat of a standard chassis with the exception of their F1, their formula cars. And then there was SCX. SCX bought out their compacts, and there was a chassis with a set wheelbase for their NASCARs. and then another one for their DTMs, and then their formulas. And then they went away for a while, but they have recently come back, which is really a shot in the arm for 143rd. And some of the other guys here, they maybe interject a little bit more information on that.
Okay, so like HO, there is a certain amount of body chassis swapping available if you wanted to do such a thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
I think that's a good segue. Kev sent me a bunch of pictures, but I think we're going to let Leo take the floor for a bit.
Yep.
He's got some things that he wants to share, and then we'll show off the pictures that Kev sent. Are you ready to go, Leo?
Yep.
All right, take it away.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Can you see at the back? Yeah, so Alan mentioned Artin, and Artin was obviously one of the early 143rd scale slot car systems around. And so, as Alan mentioned, they tend to be a bit sort of blobbyish, like this Lancia Stratos. Photograph's not great, so the detail is better than it looks in the photograph. But yeah, it's a fairly low detail car. Most 143rd cars still have, blacked out windows or whatever, and don't have an interior. So it's unusual to see a 143rd scale slot car with an interior, with a driver and whatever. So that's the Stratos. I tried to get a better photograph of it, but didn't. But you can see there's some bonnet detail, filler cap, things like that. So they're not bad. They're not awful models. The oily bits underneath, this is the underneath of that car. Guide pin, some people love that, some people hate it. Brushes, decent brushes, they're not sort of metal contacts for brushes. This car's lost the brown magnet, which should be in this space here. They have a sort of S-can sized motor, which I believe is 7 volts rated. I'm not too sure about that, but I believe it's 7 volts rated. So if you drive them at 12 volts or whatever for a while, they don't last long. Pete mentioned the bodies being sort of interchangeable, and you can see these lugs here, which clip the body onto the chassis. So yes, you could pull off this body and put on a body from not quite anything. I think there are different lengths. I think they're like 2 lengths of Artin chassis. But you could interchange the bodies fairly easily just by doing that. Some bodies do a screw at the front. I think this may have a screw at the front, but I've lost it. So that's the an early Artin car. This is a later Artin car, and you can see it's a GT1 Porsche. It's basically the same sort of concept. Underneath the lugs to clip the body on, this one has the screw there. You can see the screw as well. But the lugs are enough to hold the body on. Again, pin guide, brushes, a larger magnet on this car. They are basically magnet traction toy cars. So yeah, large magnets.
Leo, what's your aftermarket like for things like tires and brushes and stuff?
Right. Okay, that is a big problem. But yeah, some companies do offer tires for Artin slot cars. The tires on the Stratos that I showed are plasticized now, so they're long past needing replaced. I have to say I don't tend to run Artin cars, so I'm not sure who is a good source of tires for them, but they are out there. Alan might have a clue. Alan gone?
There are, believe it or not, some of the HO tires. Okay,
Right.
from Gel Claw and AW and so forth, where you can stretch them over some of these wheels, and surprising again, you get the traction very well. I can only speak as far as the drag racing aspect is concerned right now, but they hook up quite well. Don't hold me 100% to this, but there are some things that are changing in the 143 scene. For those who may recognize the name Steve Eggleston / Ranch Design. He bought out a series of wheels and had some tires available, gears and so forth, and bearings for specifically for the 143rd market. He went away for a while, but through some encouragement from us, he's coming back. Now, Steve also is a machinist by trade. And if you would see some of the stuff that he machines in aluminum, it looks like glass. I mean, he is just that much of a perfectionist. He is making and has been making the aluminum molds for one of the well-known tire makers out of Canada. And that gentleman at one time had a series of 143rd tires available. Well, because the market kind of went down a little bit, they backed off on supplying. Well, that's coming back online again. Soon you will be seeing 143rd tires coming from that gentleman again. So things are looking up for 143rd.
I'm betting Leo might have some ranch design things upcoming here. No, all
Sorry,
right.
sorry, but no.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, ranch design. Steve sort of kind of went off the scene just as I got into 143rd. So that was a big problem for me. So when he said he was coming back and appeared on the 143rd scale Zoom chat, I thought, great, excellent. So we can sort of move forward again. Here we are, a Carrera Go car. Go is spelled 3 exclamation marks. Call me a pedant, but that's the brand. Oh, who's that? So this is a Citroen C4, isn't it? And as you can see, there's good detail. This is a fairly modern 143rd scale car. Great details, you know, everything there. Blacked out windows, of course. But the model is very true to the actual one-to-one car. So the standard of 143rd scale cars has improved, kind of in line with how the 132nd scale cars quality improved as well. But obviously with the size, there are limitations. This is Carrera Go pin guide, double brushes. The brushes just push in, clip in easily, easily swapped out for the kind of, well, I hesitate to say they're aimed at the sort of toy market, but basically they are. Magnet at the back, sort of fairly standard flat chassis. The motor is kind of Go size. Is it an N20? I'm not sure, but it's a small motor, which is fairly standard for all the Carrera cars. And as you can see, they're quite good detail. Even the tires have a nice tread. And yeah, quite nice cars. Oops. Right, okay. This has been discussed before on here when there was a proxy event going on in Germany. And the idea was to try and promote the use of 3D printing for chassis. So this car here is a standard Carrera Go body shell, Porsche 911, but the proxy mandated 3D printed chassis. The chap who ran the proxy provided the design and the file, so anyone with a printer could basically print out the chassis. Oh, oops, sorry. Print out the chassis, fit it to the car, and away it went. So here's mine. You can see it's printed. The guide is printed as well. We discussed the guide being a two-part item: the braid plate, and then the I'm waving my hands here, but you can't see, and then the blade fitted into the plate. I glued mine in. I don't know if everyone did, but yeah, and it's a swivel guide, as you can imagine. The rest of the mechanicals are the standard Carrera parts, so it's a fairly low-cost proxy to enter. They use the standard car bits. There were a variation in the bodies. I chose the Carrera branded Porsche Carrera, which is, you can get yourself tied in knots of that nomenclature. But yes, so that was interesting to see that one. Right, this is a car I put together in my early 143rd days. using a traditional resin body, sort of John Kit style molded resin body, 1/43 scale that I had. And I used the chassis from one of the Electric Micro Gotham City Police cars you may have seen, quite small. And so it's got some modern wheels. This is a 1960s Lancia Flaminia. But it's
sorry
got
to
modern
interrupt,
wheels.
Leo. That car looks like it has an interior.
Oh, it does. Yes. Yeah, I excelled myself there, didn't I? The windows, typical of sort of resin kits of that era, the windows don't fit very well. And my modeling skills didn't help. But yes, I did manage to sort of produce a driver, very low detail. There are no pictures of the chassis of this to protect the guilty. Right, here we are. SCX Compact has been mentioned. These are kind of, well, in my opinion, the better cars in the 1/43 ready-to-run market. Nicely made. They run well without the magnets. If you take the magnet out, you can still drive it, whereas the Carrera Go cars basically become undrivable without the magnet. And this is an Audi, as you can see. Again, nice detail, very nice detail, even little things like that. Nicely decorated as well, so the tampo printing is really sharp on this. Underneath, swivel guide with double brushes. That's always a good thing in my book. Small magnet. I think the motor on this is very similar to the Carrera Go motor. Same sort of size, N20, I think, is it? So yeah, so these are quite nice cars. In fact, very nice cars. This is a fairly modern, as you can see, it's a Mercedes AMG GT3 Coupe, to give it its full title. Another SCX compact car. Not sure what's happened to the front tires, they've gone white like that. But yeah, again, nice detail, excellent tampo printing to the body. It gives it a nice finish. The body, compares very well with the 1/32 equivalents by Scalextric and other manufacturers. Underneath, double brushes, swivel guide. I've removed the magnet from this one. You can see that. So yes, so they're not, they've come a long way from the sort of toy market. You can happily, admire these. This is WRC brand. For a short period, the World Rally Championship people started to sell slot car kits amongst their marketing stuff, their sales pitch, and so they produced these sets, which are made by a company called AGM Dragon in China. AGM Dragon also make the Artin type cars nowadays. The Artin brand has basically vanished, but been replaced by various proprietary brands such as WRC and source factory is AGM Dragon in China. So nice details. The mismatched wheels are true to the car. That's how Hyundai present their cars. Inevitably, when they're competing on an event, the wheels are all the same color, but for presentation purposes, they're colored to like red and blue. So again, excellent details, nice details. Underneath, again, double brushes. That's really standard on the 1/43 scale cars, which is nice. Obviously, you can play tricks with the brushes. If you don't want them doubled up, you can refold them so there's only the one. I took the magnet out, and for some reason or other, blanked off the hole. I don't know why. Again, the small N20 size motor, you can see that. Again, great detail, the diffuser veins on the back, tire treads, all that kind of stuff. They're modern Prussians. Oh, sorry, I seem to come to the end. Right, so I hope that's been of interest. Let you see how 1/43 scale cars have come from, well, they've arrived here from here, but they're not exactly blobs, but they're low detail.
Good stuff.
Well, it seems like they've evolved more from toys to being a hobby.
Yeah, yes. That's something that's not really caught on. I think they still kind of live with the toy world, but Lloyd's Zoom chats and Lloyd's kind of activity is trying to push for the hobby to develop and establish itself.
Leo, have you ever tried cutting a pair of your double brushes off?
No, sorry. Yeah, I did ponder that, but the cars seem to go okay with them doubled up. I think I shortened some so they didn't overlap. You know, they didn't overlap, so one was further down. So they're both on the same plane, as it were.
It might be a good experiment to try. You'll get a lot less upward pressure of the brushes, which may let the guide sit a little lower and a little more consistent in the slot.
Yes.
Won't have as much upward spring on it.
Yeah. Yep. They're very light, and so the springiness of the brushes is kind of a big effect. The go cars are, dare I say it, quite bad for that. The go cars do need the brushes flattened out and processed, should we say, by rubbing them flat, or else the car will just simply deslot.
Yeah, we at the commercial track we sell quite a few 43rd scale cars, and when customers buy them, as a matter of course, I'll take them out of the package and cut the back set of brushes off.
Right. Okay. I was just going to say to you, cutting the back ones off would seem the obvious thing to do, but maybe shortening the front ones.
Well, it really depends on the position of the guide pin.
Right, which is there.
You can see where the guide pin here is basically, it acts as a separator for the front set of brushes.
Yes.
Right. So on this particular car, I would cut the rears off and just try using the fronts.
Right. Okay.
Now,
changing the.
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say changing the braid material would not be too difficult. The clips that that fit into the bottom of the chassis are sort of there and there. So there's a sort of brass, well, not brass, but a metal plate. So you could actually solder on your own choice of braid material.
Yeah,
as well.
you can also, those are those are just folded over bits of brass. They're the keepers.
Yeah.
So carefully you can use an X-Acto blade and unfold the folded bits and stick a new piece of braid in there and then fold them back down if you want.
Right.
I also noticed, oh, sorry, I was going to ask about the guide pin itself. It looks like it's kind of rectangular in shape. Does it rotate?
No, it doesn't rotate. It's oval shape, basically. It's NASCAR oval shaped, but they don't rotate. No.
Yeah, I think it's mainly so like the car will go successfully through a career, or go 1/43rd scale track, plastic track, but not allow the car to rotate around. So so if the car does detach from the magnetic, it'll snap out a little bit, but since the guide is longer than the slot is wide, it'll either just completely deslot or not spin around.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm glad to hear that Chris has been dabbling in 1/43rd scale.
Yeah, let's see some Chris Walker 1/43rd.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to happen. We've sold a lot of them at both Mini Grid, where I used to help out, and at Ernie's track now. I've got enough to do with 32nd and 24th.
Yeah.
I appreciate them, but I'm just not there.
Yeah.
No worries. Mainly a joke. Great slideshow, Leo. Does anybody have any questions for Leo before we move on to additional 1/43rd stuff?
Has anyone ever run these 43rd scale cars on Scalextric Sport Track?
Yes.
How do they go?
They go fine. Depending on the brand, you may need, especially with the pin guide ones, you may need to thin out the sides of the pin a little bit.
Yeah. I was going to say that the standard Scalextric Go pins are a little bit thick for Scalextric track.
Yeah.
Work fine on Carrera track and other track with a wider slot, but the
Yeah.
narrowish slot on Scalextric track will need that to be filed down a little bit.
We have a couple of guys who've actually run their Carrera Go cars on the big wood track at Electric Dreams. They run great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's
on Ninko, I've just replaced my Ninko track, but on Ninko, the rails are slightly raised above the surface of the track. So the Go cars with the purple magnets just basically clamp themselves to the rails and struggle to move. But all the other, Carrera's Evolution track, they work fairly well on that. You have to spread the braids out quite a bit. But but Ninko can be challenging, but the others are all okay, I think.
Yep.
So we're going to show off some of Kevin's cars that he showed me, and most of the cars that he sent me were basically to show off the detail and what can be accomplished in a 1/43rd scale car that you might have previously only thought is going to be a 1/32nd or larger scale car. So we've got a fantastic rally car. Kevin, is that a custom paint job or is that a stock paint job? It looks like it's stock, but if that's a custom, then you did a fantastic job. I think
It's stock.
That's stock. That's a stock
Carrera Go?
WRC one.
Oh, WRC. Okay. And then this is your truck. That's not company provided. That's a custom of some sort, right?
Yeah, that's one of T-Law's in. I think he's in Norway, something like that.
Fantastic.
It's a resin body.
Yeah. What kind of chassis is under that?
It's on a 3D printed chassis.
Nice. It's some SCX.
2 SCX GT3s there. That's a Ninko car.
Really?
Yeah. It's a Ninko GT3 Maserati on 43rd scale.
Very scarce.
That's an old Artin car transformed into what do you call it?
I would not have pegged that as an Artin car, so a lot of work went into that, I assume.
Yeah, it's one of the first ones I ever did, to be honest with you. The little headlights on the front that you see there, the little pins that you stick into a pin board, painted up.
That's nice. Ooh.
That's a 3D printed Porsche Ferrari 350 Can-Am car.
Did you do that on resin or FDM?
That's on filament, yeah.
Wow.
That's an Auto Coast TI 22.
And now
Printed again.
Are all the chassis printed as well?
Yeah, oh yeah. And that's the same one that Leo was talking about for the German proxy.
Yeah.
That's another Ninko car. That's a Ninko. I think it was called a pickup patrol, like a toy car, but I kind of remodeled it into a NASCAR truck.
I was going to say it looks kind of like a Ute.
That's my impression of a NASCAR truck, anyway. So
yeah, fantastic work. I mean, Lloyd is also here. I was hoping that he'd be willing to show some of his work. I know you're not super proud of it, but I think you did a fantastic job. Do you have any pictures on hand of some of the brass chassis you've done? Because there have been some fantastic things done in 1/43rd with brass and, of course, 3D printed and stuff. But maybe you could talk a little bit about brass chassis if you don't have pictures on hand.
Yeah. Hello, I'm gone. Just lost you there. It was interesting going through all of these ready-to-run cars that we're all talking about there. They've lost me on most of them because I'm more interested in making brass chassis and resin bodies, and have gone through, well, since about 2009. when I first got into the hobby. He just showed Kev's Mazda there. That is an Artin motored car, and Artin motors have no brakes. And that proved it on my little Monty track when it took off. It's the only car to have ever flown off of the little Monty track. So, it goes right from the whole spectrum with 143rd. You can go from the ready-to-run cars to cars that are completely made up of, like you would in any other scale, a scratched-up car. I like to make brush chassis. We do not have much in the way of racing for 143rd clubs or anything, so I just run what I feel like running. And I used to make brush chassis way back in the day, and it's just something I like to do. So a brush chassis 143rd car can be very much like a small 132nd car, full interior, sidewinders. The parts are all out there. You just have to shop around a little bit to find them all.
Yeah, and like Alan and Leo were mentioning, Ranch Design is coming back into the scene. Is probably going to be providing nice wheels and nice tires and things for and gears for the scale. And I kind of also wanted to touch on, Leo talked about the proxy, and Kev showed his proxy car. There's some of that going on. Peter Fuchs over in France, I think. Austria does a bunch of fantastic 3D printing stuff, and basically supplies the 143rd world with a lot of models and stuff that can be ordered off of Shapeways and to improve cars. Hopefully we get some more show and tell on future Worldwide Slot Car chats from 143rd, doing some fancy stuff. But if you're interested in the world of 143rd, well, hey, there's a new YouTube channel called 143rd Slot Car World being created. The goal of that channel is to help 143rd newbies and enthusiasts to not only learn how to get the best and the most out of their consumer, toys, but also to show them how deep the rabbit hole goes. So I'm going to make sure that I put a link down in the description of this video to the 143rd Slot Car World YouTube channel. And that channel will be, it's just created, so there's not a whole lot of content on there right now, but I would suggest anybody interested in 143rd subscribe to that channel, because they're going to be putting videos up to cover that whole spectrum, right? To help the newbies with, car tuning tips and tricks, as well as showcasing, some of the cool stuff done with, like what we just saw, resin bodies, 3D printed chassis, and we talked about brass chassis. That's the kind of stuff that's going to be on that channel. And of course, that channel will be also a good place to learn about the 143rd Slot Car chat that takes place. Of course, you can find out about that on various slot car related forums where Lloyd posts the invitations to. So if you're already interested in joining the 143rd group, head on over to your favorite forum and look for the 143rd Slot Car chat information. Alan, did you have something you wanted to add?
I was wondering if it's okay if I steer them over to another area.
Oh yeah, your forum. Go ahead. Alan has a great 143rd forum getting going, and I'll do my best to make sure there's a link to that in the video description as well. Down in the description below, click see more and look at the links and click the links and follow along. And I'm sure that'll be a great repository of information and links to videos and other things. And so we kind of want, there's already just a ton of Carrera Go videos on YouTube. If you just go to YouTube and search Carrera Go, you're going to see all kinds of videos from Carrera of America, and all kinds of toy reviewers and just various YouTubers just showing off the latest set from Carrera or whatever the case may be. we're hoping that this channel becomes more of a resource for getting the most out of your set, not just here's a cool new set from Carrera, but here's what you can get out of that cool new set. And you know, just because your kid got a new Carrera Go set doesn't mean you can't become involved in the slot car hobby through 1/43rd scale racing, because it's not just Carrera Go, SEX Compact, WRC, and make them from scratch. So everything is under that umbrella. So we're looking forward to that side of the hobby grow. And I think I got it all. Does any other 1/43rd guy want to toss anything in before we move on to regular old show and tell?
I got a quick question for the 43rd guys. I didn't, and through all your pictures there, I didn't see any Kyoshos. Any reason why?
They've stopped producing them, so it's kind of like a dead end road. So we've sort of kind of strayed away from that so far. I do have a D slot car, but you know, I decided not to bother showing it because it was the end of the road for them. So yeah. Alan's got one.
Let me spotlight that real quick.
They're almost as expensive as your 124 cars.
Yeah,
they're really expensive.
They're real nice though. I did pick up a D slot when they weren't crazy expensive of Porsche 917. You know, fantastic, highly detailed bodies for sure.
Yeah.
The chassis left a little bit to be desired.
Overcomplicated,
yeah. And what I think, you know, I don't expect it to be coming, but what would be really cool is to see a manufacturer of, you know, performance slot cars enter the 1/43rd market, like Kyosho tried, but better, you know, with actual slot car experience and knowledge, and produce something more like a slotted or an NSR or something like that in that scale. I'm sure it can be done. It's just a matter of
easy
doing it. And that's a great, you know, point back to the stuff that Peter puts up on Shapeways with his chassis and wheels and parts for the 1/43rd market, because those are fantastic cars. You just got to build them yourself. You can't get them ready to run.
Well, if you look at the technology and the performance, et cetera, of the HO cars right now, 1/43rd is it's giant size. It's easy to make stuff in that size, right?
Yeah.
And it, you know, so it's obviously possible. It's just a matter of, you know, getting there, and that's kind of what we're wanting to plant the seed and get some more, you know, uptake of 1/43rd as a hobbyist scale rather than a toy scale. So that would be fantastic to see in the future. Go ahead, Alan. You're muted.
Thank you. One of the things that I've been working on, I haven't had time to take pictures of it, but mentioning the HO, what I am in the process of developing right now is a 3D printed chassis. That chassis has the front axle, wheels, and either a guide pin or a rotating guide. But if you can consider the pod cars today in 1/32nd, what this design will do is simply take an HO chassis, remove the front axle and wheels, and it's the remainder of the chassis snaps in to my 1/43rd chassis. And then you do nothing more than put a longer rear axle and wheels on it, and you'd be surprised the performance that you can get out of it. So as soon as I get the finishing touch on that, we'll go ahead and post that up for everybody.
Yeah, and that's fantastic because that basically opens the 1/43rd performance cars to HO performance parts.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. Looking forward to that. So I think we're good to go back to our regularly scheduled program. Does anybody have any show and tell they'd like to show and or tell? Go ahead and raise your virtual hand and we'll make sure we get to that. Don has his virtual hand up, so I'm going to call on you, Mr. Young. Take it away.
A project that I was working on that I showed you the start of a few episodes back, I have completed.
Ah, very nice. Needs a little more yellow.
I was going to say those are Greg's colors.
No, that's awesome. Is that kind of like a satiny paint or maybe some sparkle in there? Or?
Well, it's a Meta Flake car paint with clear coat on it.
Yeah, very nice. And you put that together from the white kit, right?
Yes, I don't know if you can see any of the details in it or not.
It actually looks pretty good on camera. Good stuff, Don.
Don, did you customize that front grille?
No, that comes with the kit.
Oh, I hadn't seen one like that before.
Is that the Plymouth?
That looks nice.
It's the Dodge.
Dodge.
Yeah, there's two bodies. Good stuff.
Then the next one.
Greg would pay double for it.
I got this in the mail today.
Hey, you got it. Excellent. Canada Post actually did their job. Yay.
But you haven't opened it. Oh, yeah, you have.
Yes, I have. And then for those of you who like to collect TV cars, it looks like Pioneer has reissued this.
Oh, so there's more on the market then.
Yep.
What's on the roof?
Yeah, it's the real thing.
That's right.
The only difference I see is Daisy's wearing white shorts instead of blue.
The original run had multiple daisies. I got two cars by accident, and each one had a different daisy. I think there's like 4 or 5 daisies.
Okay.
Different outfits. So, yeah.
You guys are sick. You shouldn't be focusing on the.
I don't know why you're talking about that.
I always thought that they didn't, like stock car companies didn't reissue them because doesn't that kill the collector market?
Yeah, I am actually kind of surprised.
That's strange.
Jules, yeah, I think Jules is kind of. I thought he was of the same mind, but I know he releases all kinds of things, but I didn't know that he would re-release something that he'd already.
It could have been stock from that they found. You never know.
Yeah,
well, it could be, but there's 2 companies right now on eBay selling them that both have more than 10 in stock.
Were they crazy priced?
No, well, they're about like everything else, about $15 more than what they sold for to start with. But
yeah, so that kind of implies that whoever's selling those on eBay got more of them, because if they were original run, they'd be selling them for over $100, I imagine, because that's been several years now.
Yeah, that just seems weird.
They're less than $80.
Yeah. Awesome. Good stuff, Don. Anybody else got anything they want to show and tell? John, you got your hand up?
Yeah, back during my days with Mini Z's, I got one of these. I don't know if you can see that well. There it is. It's a pit box cooler. Got a fan in it.
Okay.
Turn it on. There's a light, and when your motor cools off, it'll change the color of the light. There's the hole, and your car sits just like that as you work on it, cooling the motor.
Is that battery powered then?
Yeah, it's got a 9-volt battery in it.
So you got some kind of infrared sensor to see how hot the motor is?
I suppose. I'm not quite sure how that works. It's but when you flip it on, you can hear it. So it's telling me right now that this motor is cool. So if you go into the pits to work on your cars and the motors are hot, you turn, at least in the Mini Z's, you cool them down, then you'd work on them. I don't find that my slot cars get quite as warm as quickly, but if you're running one of those long races, this might be a nice little tool to have in the pits to if you're changing tires or doing stuff like that to cool that motor off to give it a little extra life.
Yeah, but can
I
you
throw mine into the beer cooler?
Well, there's that too.
Are those still being manufactured though? I mean, how easy is it for those to be found?
You know, I found this at Lone Star when we were racing there. There's now a couple of other guys that have them on the internet, but they're not. If I remember correctly, there's one for slot cars, and it's more of a flat pan cooler. And then there's a couple of different ones for mini Z's that can work as a slot car cooler. So you have to kind of hunt around a little bit. And I'm not sure I guess it's just called a motor cooler if you go to look for it. So, and this particular one is a WBR. I don't know who that company is, but I've got a couple of these that I keep around.
Okay, so it's not a Kyosho product. It's by a third party.
Right. Kyosho's having a real problem right now trying to decide if they want to make cars or not. You know, so. But it works on on larger cars. They fit real nicely, and I've got a couple of friends that use their 124s, and they cool their 124s down with them too, which seem to get a little bit hotter than my 132nd. I don't know why.
Just yeah.
Yep. All right. Thanks for showing that one off. That's a new one to me. And Dennis, you've got your hand up. You're up next. What's up?
All right, I'll see if this works. I'm having lots of trouble with bandwidth this morning, but I'm going to try. Yep, here we go. I had kind of hoped that Tony Palmer would be on the call today, but he isn't. But this one's going to Tony. He sent me this. It's a resin body from John Warren, the guy called Munter, down in New Zealand. Datsun 510, and it has one of my creations underneath.
That is just sparse.
Finishing it off today. I'll test it this afternoon once we're done with our call.
What is the chassis made out of?
That's brass and piano wire.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm just hoping it's not too light, but I have a similar one and it works pretty well. The pieces of brass down the sides where the screw heads are, those are 062, so 16 thick. The pieces up the front are 50,000s. So we'll see. If it doesn't work, I got plenty of space to put more weight into the middle of it.
Dennis, are you putting a full interior in the car?
The cars, as I recall, come with a tray interior. Tony didn't send me those pieces, so I don't know what he's going to do. And I'm going to leave the finishing of the body up to him, because it'll no doubt either be BRE colors or it'll be silver, knowing Tony.
It'll only be silver, Dennis.
Yeah, silver and number 33, right?
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, it has a Thunderslot 21 motor in it, so it should go pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of tires are on that?
They are, as I recall, I think they're actually Thunderslot rubber. They're ones that I did for him some time back, with the little foam inserts in them and glued and trued. Yeah. And they're CVD insert wheels at the rear. The fronts are, I think, slotted magnesiums on one of their independently rotating axles.
Oh, nice.
Can you add weights to the side trays?
Oh yeah, I could, but if I want to, if I'm going to add weight to this one, I'll just put it in all that empty space in the middle.
Oh yeah.
But attached to the side pans, not attached to the rails, so that it moves with the side pans.
I can't see, Dennis. Is that a solid rail or a flexi board in the middle?
What that is in the middle, it's two pieces of 039, and I'm afraid this for some reason, this thing doesn't always focus very well.
Okay.
The guide is actually mounted to that spine in the middle.
Yeah.
So it has a little bit of side-to-side flex on the guide itself. It's not detached.
The center is not a pivot tube, though.
No, there's no
Okay.
pivot.
Okay,
No pivot
it's
at
just a
all.
bit fuzzy on my screen. That's okay.
Yeah, it's fuzzy on mine too. I just don't get very good. For some reason or other, I don't get very. If I get it up close, it doesn't focus very well.
Okay.
How did you mount that on there? Is that plastic strut you mounted it to the body?
Those two little screws there go into a. They go through the side pans into a little piece of brass that has a nut soldered onto it, and that little piece of brass is glued onto a piece of high density foam, and the high density foam is glued onto the body. Maybe I can
see it inside.
See it inside there.
Oh, that black piece.
That black piece. That's a piece of foam. If you like, I can take the body off and show you. I've got a screwdriver here somewhere. I should have. I've been working.
What do you search for if you're wanting to get some of this high density foam? What do you shop for?
Weather stripping. You go down to the hardware store and buy it there.
I thought that was
that's one way.
I thought that was pretty squishy though.
It is. You could use that. What I've done, the stuff that I use, I bought quite a while back, and I bought it in a piece that was 4 feet by 4 feet square because I was making tires out of it. So that was a bit different. Hold on a moment.
Greg, I got a roll of that on Amazon. It was something like a 50-foot roll by 1/4 inch wide, black, and it was specifically high density foam.
Okay.
And it was under $10 for all that.
So as long as you're searching for high density, you're going to get less squishy stuff.
Yeah, that's what I came up with. It was when I got it, it's definitely high density. It's not like the typical weather stripping foam.
Yeah, that's what when I hear weather stripping, that's what I'm thinking of, is like the gray stuff that you could like squish.
Yeah. All right, so now I've got the body off, so you can see now what's going on inside. Let me pull back a little bit further.
Okay, so there's some plates on the foam too.
Yes. So on the back of those plates, where the hole is, there's a nut that is soldered on there.
Okay.
And then I glue that onto the foam, and then I glue the foam into the body.
So the purchase of the screws is primarily into the nut that's stuck to the back of the plate.
Right.
Yes.
And the purchase of the foam to the body that's where the body is getting purchased on the foam, is just the foam.
Correct.
Off the plate.
Yeah. Yeah, the plate itself doesn't even touch the body really. It's mostly just the foam.
And there's a tiny bit of motion between. If you push on the plate, you'll get a tiny.
Yeah, you get a little bit of movement there.
Okay.
That's closed cell, right?
Yeah, it's good. And then the chassis itself, just the side pans actually just lift a little bit at the back. They have little springs that hold it, or little pieces of 032 piano wire up the front that allows it just to spring up and down. And then there are these little stirrups that I put to control the movement. I give it about 30 thousandths of movement, and then I put a little bit of lead wire insulation over the stirrup just to dampen that movement.
Yeah.
What's 30 thou in metric?
0.8 millimeters.
Oh, okay, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, sometimes I'll do a little bit less, but this one I did that mainly because I found some 30 thousandths brass that was lying around that I could use as a spacer.
Perfect. I see there's several hands up. Do you guys have any questions for Dennis, or you got show and tell? All right, we'll assume that's show and tell. And next on my, Kev's got his hand up. What do you want to share, Kev?
Right, well, going to the same as Dennis. I got the same kit. I don't know if you can see it. This is the closest I'm going to get to a brass chassis.
Oh, there you go.
Just the brass bars holding it's adjustable chassis.
Now, are those solid bars or tubes?
Yeah,
It'll
solid
work nicely
bars.
though, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Solid bars. That's as far as I've got so far. But it's from the same guy in Australia.
New Zealand.
And obviously these posts will be epoxied to the inside of the body. And it will be a BRM car. Sorry to say.
Nothing sorry about that. That's the best livery ever.
Same as behind Jim.
Yeah.
That looks just as good, but in a different way, right? Now,
There's a fellow in the UK. His name is Mark Gussin, Gussin. You'll find him on Facebook and a couple of other places. He has a very nice decal set for 132 for that car, for the BRE car, printed on a printer that prints white.
Did you want to show something else on that chassis? There you go.
Yeah, you see the little grub screws, 2mm grub screws to hold each separate piece.
Yep.
Of the chassis onto the brass bar.
Now,
So it makes the chassis adjustable. You can make it for any size car you want.
Is there any
brass rod there?
Is there any torsion?
2mm. Yeah, it
Little
a little bit.
Is that brass rod?
Yeah.
You might want to consider you might want to consider some piano wire.
Same
2mm.
Sorry?
2mm.
Yeah, you might want to consider some piano wire instead of the brass rod.
What key do you search when you're searching for piano wire? Do you search by diameter or key?
By diameter.
By diameter, yeah.
Okay.
But 2mm would be way too thick for that car, and if it was piano wire.
True, but you could certainly insert some brass sleeves and then run a thinner piano wire in there.
And what's the reason for that?
Probably for more rigid. So if it drops or you hit it, the brass will bend easier. Just lifting it up.
Brass will keep
it's not really more rigid. It's the memory that piano wire has.
Yeah.
So it'll flex and come back where brass tends to flex and stay bent.
Right. Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, if the brass bends, it'll stay bent.
Right.
Yeah. Or just 2mm piano wire. So he was showing a good amount of torsion with the brass. Would he get the same amount of torsion, or would he want that much torsion with piano?
It depends on
what you're
the
driving.
slower the car goes, and the tighter the track, and the less grip your tires. As a general rule, you can have a more flexible chassis. As your tire grip goes up, your motor speed goes up, and you go faster and faster, wide radius corners, the chassis tends to want to be a little stiffer, because with grippy tires and a fast motor and wide open corners, you're putting a lot of stress on the chassis, right? So you really need to play around with it. Dennis is right. If you took those out and put 2mm piano wire in, you may as well put titanium in there. So you would probably have to put a brass sleeve in the back part of the chassis and the front part of the chassis, and then insert some smaller diameter piano wire into that.
To keep the torsion, but gain the resiliency.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right, thanks, Kev. And I'm going to go ahead and call on Brian next. You got your hand up, Mr. Giprich. What's going on?
Can you hear me okay?
Good to go.
Okay. I wanted to share a couple things. One, last week, Jeremy had asked me if I'd post some links to some Tinkercad files for the pinion press and a couple of the cars. I put those in the comments section of the last video, Greg. I'm not sure if that was where I should have put them, but I did.
If you put links, then YouTube, because I don't remember getting a notification of your comment, which I pretty much always do.
Okay.
So it probably got automatically filtered. So
okay.
if you could
if
drop
someone would check for me, that would be great.
Or if you could-
where should I put that?
I was going to say, go ahead and just email them to me, ggalb@ggalb.com, or put them in the Zoom chat.
Okay, the chat part itself.
Yeah, because then I can make sure that they appear.
Okay. And then I wanted to share a work in progress. Can you guys see that?
Oh, 3D. Yep.
Yep. So this is
looks badass.
Yeah. Now, what you got to think here is the inspiration for this was kind of the Bonneville Salt Flat hot rods.
I was thinking Dick Tracy.
Yeah, that kind of works too.
I was thinking Prowler.
This is very early stages. I just have the basic shape and I worked on the roof and the proportions. But to give you some perspective of size, those are 20 millimeter tall rear tires. To give you an idea.
It looks very Boyd Coddington. It's awesome.
Scoot that back. So just, I mean, after seeing all the stuff these guys were showing today, it's kind of plain.
No, it's a style, dude. I love it.
It's again, very early stages. There will be some more embellishments. Obviously, I'm probably gonna do some sort of scoop on it, some sort of exhaust, and I may do a little bit more contouring on the body yet.
Yeah, some panel lines will do it.
Yeah, that's about 60 millimeters wide at the rear track. The body's about 40. You can see there it is, hollowed out underneath, 1 millimeter thick right now. So lots of room. This one could be interesting because the guide flag may actually have to go behind the rear axles on this one. But when you got the rear or wheels forward like that, that's kind of inevitable.
Yeah.
But
that needs a blower on it, Brian.
I agree. It definitely needs something on this.
You gotta have a big honking blower on the top of that hood.
Yeah, something the driver can't see past.
And then I'm thinking, big old side pipes on the side as well.
Brian, you could use a trailing guide and it might solve your problem actually.
Well, the other thing I was thinking was maybe using axle stubs and have the chassis actually come out from the body. So I wouldn't have an axle going through the front here, and then I could still move that guide all the way to the front. So have like a swing arm type thing come out here from the chassis.
Do you gain a lot by moving the guide that far forward versus having it behind the axle?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if you're doing stub front wheels, then it won't matter quite as much, as long as you got a nice big triangle.
Yeah, I mean, this is the look with the wheels this far forward. So, I mean, I could definitely, if you move them back, it kind of.
Oh, yeah, no.
It loses it a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look right.
Yeah, no, I like it better that way.
What's the length? Do you know, Brian, by chance, what's the distance from the center line of the rear axle to where you would put the pivot point of the guide as it is?
Well, the body itself's 115 millimeters long.
So probably about 90.
I'm figuring the guide flag would go about here. You know what? I can probably figure that out real quick.
I'm thinking
115, 110, 105, maybe 100, somewhere around there.
I mean, if you're going to the tip of the nose up high is pretty far out there.
Now, Brian was the one that showed us those real progressive looking cars last week, right?
Yeah, same guy.
Now, how does this compare in size to what you showed us last week?
It's the same length. It's 115
Oh,
millimeters.
okay.
Chris, I'm looking at my chassis that I was typically going to use, and it's an 86 millimeter or 85 millimeter wheelbase typically, and from the center of the guide pin or the guide flag hole to the rear axles is about 90.
Okay.
Nailed it.
And you run predominantly with magnets, right?
Correct.
Okay, that makes less of a difference then. It's
right.
Without magnets, it's probably a bit on the short side, but with magnets, it really negates a lot of that.
And size parameters here for me basically is driven by my printer, my resin printer.
Yep.
I have one of the smaller ones, and I could go larger, but then I got to stand it. I don't want 9-hour prints.
Right. No,
You know.
that'll go just fine.
Yeah, I print this bad boy in 3.5, 4 hours. But very early stages. I started this yesterday. Did a little work on the front. I'm not even sure I'm sticking with that grill yet. You know, most of the Bonnie cars had flat or no holes there, but it's not necessarily a true salt flats car. It was kind of inspired by that.
Yeah. Looks very cool.
It looks real cool.
Hey, Chris, can you name some cars with a 90mm axle to guide post?
I could if I went downstairs and measured them.
Okay, just not off the top of your head.
I was just measuring for some
I would
guys
think
last week.
something like an NSR Porsche 997 would be about that length.
Yeah, I was measuring some of the F1, like the NSR F1 cars, and they're like mid 90s, 96, 97. The scale autos are, you know, a lot higher than that. I mean, the slot at Alpha T33 and the 312s are short little buggers, and they go around just fine. So
what's the guide to axle on those?
I don't even want to give you a number
Okay.
because it's going to be wrong. I'm going to guess.
I'm
If
just
you
trying to
want to
get my
know,
head
if you guys chat, I can go down and measure one in like 2 seconds.
No. I'm just trying to
Okay.
get my head around the length relative to cars that I'm familiar with.
So isn't a thunder slot in that range?
Sorry?
Isn't a thunder slot in that range? Around 90?
Again, depending, yeah.
So give me a little engineering class here. By moving the pin back behind that axle, what's that doing to the car? Why is it better to be further up? Is it a matter of balance?
Well, it's a little more complicated. A shorter, I don't call, when I talk about wheelbase, I'm not talking about the distance from the front wheels to the back wheels.
It's from the pin back.
Where the pin rotates, so the center point of the post to the center point of the rear axle. The longer that distance is, generally the more stable the car is, and it will perform much better on longer wide radius tracks or wide radius corners. A shorter distance transitions very, very quickly and is generally better for tight, twisty tracks.
Got it.
If you're running on a track that has no borders or a rally type track where guys have scenery very close to the edge of the track, for any given slip angle, a shorter guide lead will produce less slip angle. So a longer car will sway around a lot on the back end. So if you're running without borders, it's better to run a short wheelbase car. It gives you more room to slide and stuff like that. But
okay, cool.
The position of the guide relative to the front wheels, again, that depends. On 24 scale cars, it really doesn't make much difference because you don't even have front wheels. And then it depends on how you like to set up your cars. Do you have them heavy on the front wheels? Do you have the front wheels off the track? The key measurement or the most influential measurement is centerline rear axle to guide post.
And whether or not the front wheels are independent or
Yeah, that does different. I mean, that's a big topic all in itself. But,
for another chat then.
The position of the guide to the front wheels is of less general importance than the position of the guide to the rear axle.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
You guys were asking
I'm not
about.
saying that all things aren't important, but it's less important.
If you want to simplify it a little bit, and this is totally different, but the principle is sort of the same. Think of a Mini Cooper versus a top fuel dragster. One goes extremely stable in a straight line, but if you tried to make a Mini Cooper go 300 miles an hour and a quarter mile, it'd be all over the place. But on a nice tight track, the Mini Coopers are extremely agile, and a top fuel dragster couldn't even get around it. So it's that principle sort of,
Mhm.
and then finding the balance between those for whatever car you're running.
Yeah, that's cool. Got it.
Go ahead, Dennis.
I was just going to say that you were asking about cars that had about a 90 millimeter lead from the rear axle to the guide pivot, and I've got I've got my camera off so you can't see. The NSR Porsche 911, that is 92 millimeters.
That's the same with the Scale Auto Porsche 991.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that 90 to 95 range, we've got a bunch of those NSR 997s circulating around in proxies right now, and set up well, they just blast. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff, Brian. Thanks for sharing. And let's get over to Jim before we run out of time. Jim, what you got?
You said that this was open to all scales, so something just came up in HO racing this last week.
Yeah.
Or not the last week, but the last month or so, is that Wizard has started to produce brushes for T-Jets that have the groove or the slot or whatever you want to call built into it in a high quality brush. There's been others before, but this is probably the first really good T-Jet fray caliber brush to do this. And because of that, what I did is I wanted to see why this new brush, and the new brush, these are both of the old brushes, but the new brush is wider, so it fills up this cavity better. There's less slop in it.
Sorry to interrupt, but for those who don't know, the brushes you're referring to are the actual motor commutator.
These are the motor brushes. With HO cars use pickup shoes. They don't use braid or things like that. So what I did, just a really interesting quick video, is I'm trying to figure out why the bigger brush develops more power. So given the technology we have, this video is only a couple seconds long, but it's 900 plus frames per second. And you'll see when this starts that the motor is spinning. You can see actually the commutator up in here. And then when it stops and then starts again, you'll see these brushes shift, and you'll actually see the amount of play that's in the armature hole. So I'm working on a video to show why this is important in an HO car. Now it's going to stop. You see it oscillating the armature shaft.
Yeah.
And you see the brushes cock when the power is reapplied to. I'll play it one more time. So it's all the, I'm going to call it crap that we have to go through to make a T-Jet run fast.
Now there's a very, I know very little about this, but I know enough to know that the purchase of the brush to the commutator and the bottom side of the brush to those
older, the pickup shoe,
makes a big difference. And then you like file a perfect groove in the bottom of the brush to make sure that stuff doesn't go wrong, or so what's different about these brushes? That
it's pre-done. It's not hard to notch a brush, but it's tedious, and it's just, especially if you're doing 10 or so in a row, preparing cars for a race, it's just tedious, and you never seem to get it the same all the time. Nobody's really developed a good jig to do this with. You do it by hand. And now Wizard has designed a brush that it's built in, so you just don't have to do it anymore. So, nice. And there's, you saw the slop in that brush when it started and stopped. Yeah. These brushes are larger in diameter, so they should have less slop. They're slightly taller, so that increases the brush tension slightly. And they have the notch, which fits that little spring holder extremely well. So those three things seem to make more power. This is not a definitive test, but I took the car, put the new brushes in, car started coming out of the slot in places it didn't because it had more power.
Yeah. I think you basically reduced the resistance.
Yeah, so there's a number of reasons, and nobody's probably ever going to know for absolutely sure why it works, but it does seem to work, and it's a nice product, so it's new.
Well, it works in the same way that the people who spend countless hours, getting the exact right angle and depth on those brushes manually, right?
And if there's, I don't think there's too many HO people on this chat, but if you're an HO drag racer that races T-Jets, he's also bringing them out in the silver compound, which is not legal for fray racing, but he'll have the same brush in a silver compound as well.
When I used to race HO, I still may have some in the basement. I'll have to check, but years and years and years and years ago, when I raced to use HO, I had some small inserts that went into the brush tubes, single flanged. So, and then you put the brush inside that. And we also had bushings for the bottom of the armature shaft,
which are all great, but none of that's legal.
Yeah. No. I mean,
if it was legal, it would be absolutely, you'd be doing it for sure.
No, I get it. I get it.
Yeah. So if you're drag racing, the drag racing guys do that because that's legal, but in fray racing, that's not legal. So
I've got a question. How many people, now this moves back up to 132, but Jim's comments popped it into my head. How many people go in and adjust and play with the brushes on their 132nd motors?
Motor brushes?
Yeah.
Pretty much nobody.
Most rules don't allow you to open the can.
Okay.
So basically none.
Like in Mini Z, you're always going in and readjusting your brushes.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, anything, most of the stuff that Dennis does, and a lot of the stuff that I do with removable brushes and brush springs,
right?
We play with brush spring tension, and we play with armature timing, and all the rest of the stuff. But on the 25-cent motors that we all use for 32nd scale racing, no, and to be honest with you, on your track and your background there, the motor is the least important thing in your car. It's all the rest of the stuff that counts.
We used to do that in RC racing before we had, back in the day in the early 80s, we had motors like what we're using now that didn't have removable brushes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we used to do the water dipping, which is another whole thing. And we also used to, how do I say this? We used to crank the commutators.
Yeah.
So you can grab the armature and grab the shaft. And if you hold the armature and put a vice grip on the shaft, you can turn it slightly and crank and add timing to the motor. And you crank it till the motor windings break. And then you do another one just a little bit less. But we used to do that with RC motors. And yeah, between water dipping and motor cranking, that was in the stock class, that was the thing to do. Totally illegal, but everybody did it.
If you go on to any of the commercial track sites, you can buy armatures and basically specify your timing and why. There's 1,000 different bits of timing you can do. One of the things that with RC is you crank the timing too much and you really start restricting your duration of your battery life.
Another thing that some of the guys used to do that to me I used to have, or they still do, they have spec classes and they sponsored races all over the country.
Yep.
And people were taking the motor and using a magnet zapper and re-zapping the magnets to move the magnetic field. And it was essentially increasing the timing of the motor. And those motors came on like it had a second gear down the straightaway.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's all kinds of ways to cheat and go faster.
But not so prevalent in 132.
No.
So let's move things along. Big Den, you've got your hand up. Is that for a show and tell? Or are you ready for Club Corner?
Well, probably neither of the above. But
okay.
First, I'd like to ask Jim a couple of questions, harking back a couple of episodes ago when I wasn't on, but I paid careful attention. I'll just see if I can share a screen here. And it relates. Come on. Right, we got that one?
Almost.
Yeah, okay, so you can see there's a couple of F1 cars there.
Yeah, I recognize the picture.
Yeah, Jim, I'm looking at the car at the top, your NSR at the top, and I see you've got the pod mounted on the side ones, but then I think you showed the car you actually raced, and you've got the pod mounted with the back connections. Do you find any difference in the handling in regard to that?
Yes and no. It seems like putting the screws in the back holes seems to work better, but I could figure out no reason why it should or shouldn't.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Yeah.
So all my cars, all my race cars have the screws in the back.
Yeah.
So I found the car didn't chatter as much and it was a little bit more predictable that way. So I've done the same.
And that's at Electric Dreams?
Correct. No, for mine, it's like my home tracks.
Okay.
Even on my home track, it's like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that setup was one you were showing when you were going up to Modesto, was it? A couple of
Yeah, we got a race coming up
ago?
there next week, actually.
Oh yeah, okay.
Jim,
Yeah,
is your track a plastic or wood?
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have a track myself, but all the tracks I race on are wood.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason I haven't been on and the reason why I haven't got a club corner is at this stage, or other than one that's come, a meeting that's come out on Saturday, our last two scheduled race days, we've had to cancel them because we just didn't have enough people who were going to turn up for racing. So we really need 6 or 7 to make it a viable, to have enough marshals and 3 people driving. So when it gets down to 4s and 5s, you just can't, it's just not worth it. And our host has a track that he hoists up into his garage and lowers it. So if he's got to spend 40 minutes lowering it and putting it in position and then have no one turn up, it's a bit of an impost on him. So so hopefully next week I'll have some race results and things. A couple of trips to Hobart I hadn't managed to make yet because just didn't feel up to the long drive and my old age combined. So there was a question I wanted to ask someone earlier on when John Crawley was talking about that motor cooler. Someone mentioned a beer cooler.
Yeah. The cooler, your cooler, yeah.
Cooler, yeah. I just wondered whether you work on the Kaibo principles, a car in and a beer out.
There you go.
Works for me.
Oh, great. Well, I won't feel sheepish about doing that anymore. All my cars get hot. You wouldn't. But the beers get cold. So.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, that'll do me for the time.
All right.
Greg, so.
Thanks, Big Den. And Pete put his hand up. What's up, Pete?
Slot Car Club Corner. I just want to show the guys. We've got a small club here of 3 tracks so far. And I've got some YouTube videos that I've started to post. So I've shared the link to the YouTube channel in the comments. And let me just do this.
I'll definitely put that link in the description of the video. Sometimes YouTube screen shares don't come across very well, but let's
Is
see.
that the Tri-County Club?
Yeah. You muted yourself, Pete.
Peter.
There we go. So basically we have 3 tracks. One is in Caledonia, Ontario. One is in Woodstock, Ontario. And the third track, my track, is in Brantford, Ontario. I've got some videos here from my track is Blue Ridge Motorsport Park. And then Harewood Acres is in Caledonia. We're racing tonight in Woodstock. So I'll take some video of that track and post it by the end of the week. But we run, we've got about 14 or 15 different classes, all wood tracks running 10 volts. We have lots of fun. I think officially we have about 10 or 11 members. We usually average about 7 or 8 guys every Wednesday night. So cool. Lots of fun. If anybody's in the area, let us know and come on out, check us out.
So you guys have for me.
Do you guys have a Facebook or a web page or any? Because YouTube is kind of hard to communicate through. So if somebody's in the area and wants to get more information about how to attend, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, we do not have anything other than these videos that I'm posting.
Okay. So I guess comment on a video, say, hey.
Yeah, just comment on a video and I'll send you an email and then I can send you our rules and our schedule and go from there.
Cool. Say hi to Joe for me, Pete.
Will do.
All right. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Pete.
I've got one. Are we in Club Corner yet?
We are, but I want to start off Club Corner. Well, Pete already started off.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. I'm gonna second Club Corner with a promotion of the formation of a club in the UK. Scholastic Digital Club being started up in Telford, Shropshire, and Slot Newbie 1 on Slot Forum is gauging interest in that, and he's getting some help from some of the guys on Slot Forum. Shared a possible layout that he might be putting together. So he's a Scholastic Digital enthusiast who has come across a good place to have a club and set up a track. So if you're in the vicinity and want to participate in some slot car racing, then head on over to Slot Forum and look up the clubs forum and the new Scholastic Digital Club in Telford and say hi. And I'm sure they'd love to have you. That's pretty much it for me. What's up, Chris?
I just wanted to go back. I had a couple of things for show and tell, unless we're past show and tell.
Does anybody else have any Club Corner they want to do? And then we'll swing back around to Chris's show and tell. Seeing and hearing none, Chris, take it away.
Okay, this is, I wasn't on last week, but I watched last week, and there was some a segment on chassis design, and guys were asking about building chassis and all the rest of the stuff. There was some apprehension amongst a bunch of guys. So years ago, I built some real simple chassis, and we sort of called these hybrid chassis. So for anyone who wants to build a chassis and is, sort of worried about motor position and all the rest of the stuff, you can use an existing pod and just build sort of a frame around it. It's a bit of a cheat if you're, talking to the purists, but basically all you need is a single rail down the sides with a couple of cross straps, and then just drill some holes for the slotted motor pods or Scalextric motor pods, whatever you want to use, and much simpler to do. So you can do sidewinders. There's a real simple inline. So you don't need to get, fret yourself about, vertical height of the axles and motor positions and motor blocks and motor postings and all the rest of this stuff. There are some ways to come up with a pretty good handling chassis that is fairly simple to do. Is that up?
Yep.
Okay. So this one, just as a motor pod, it's a little bit different motor pod. I think these are still available. I got sent a bunch a few years ago to test. But again, 2 cross straps, bolt the motor in. This one and all of them use silicone washers, both above and below the pod lugs and nylock nuts. So I can adjust the torsion of the chassis and all the rest of the stuff. So not as sophisticated as most of the brass chassis that I normally do, but you can do it, no fuss, no hassle way if you're so inclined. Done.
Nice. Any questions for Chris? Fantastic.
Just a comment, those chassis work really, really well.
They look fantastic. I can't imagine that they wouldn't.
But I've done a lot of those well, I haven't done them, but a friend of mine wanted me to help him one time, and we did one like that for him, and he beat me with it. So yeah, they work well.
Those are kind words, right?
Yeah.
All right, good stuff.
Easy.
Yeah, and easy. Frank, you've got your hand up. You doing Club Corner or show and tell?
Actually, to segue from what Chris was just saying, when I was watching I wasn't able to participate last week either. And when watching about the building chassis, I was wishing I had been on there, because Buena Park D3 hard body races, which they race once a month out there, on the website D3 hard body, there are several videos explaining how to build a basic chassis for hard body racing. and with floppy chassis, a couple of different ways to do it, but there's quite a few videos on that site. So that's how I just wanted to mention that.
Always worth a mention. And if you want to drop a link into the chat, I'll be sure and put it in the description.
All right.
Kev asked a great question. This subject has come up from time to time in various chats and forums and things. Has anybody here had experience with using soldering wick or soldering wick, depending on what part of the world you're in, as braids for your cars, either in 132nd or 143rd or whatever cars you've used soldering wick for braids? And if so, do you use non-fluxed or fluxed? And if you use fluxed, have you noticed any issues, or have you done anything to them for any reason? Anybody in here got any personal experience with using soldering wick for braids?
I've got an opinion. I don't have any experience.
Yeah,
opinions are good, and you never know.
Yeah.
No.
No. No. Okay. Well, why?
The soldering wick is probably the cheapest braid that's available out there.
Yeah.
It's stiff. It's narrow. The stuff that's got flux in it will be awful. I just think that, you know, if you look at it, you can buy competition braid from NSR or from Slotted for like $3 for a meter of the stuff.
Right.
And I just don't know, quite honestly, why one would go. And it's, you know, it's like trying to make rear axles that are straight out of piano wire, instead of going and buying an NSR or a slotted axle that's pre-straightened, that's ground to the perfect size, etc., etc. There are some things that are just better when they come from the slot car manufacturers.
When they're bespoke for slot car purposes.
Correct.
Who put this up? Because I responded to this on a slot forum, I think, post in the last couple of days. So that was from.
I think you did, and I saw that. I don't think the post that you responded to was from the same person that asked this question, but I think your response is appropriate.
Well, the other thing that Dennis didn't mention is
yeah, it was me that put the post up on both. Yeah.
Okay.
Most wick tends to be thicker, not wide. It comes in different widths, but it tends to be thicker than most of the better 32nd scale braid out there. So it's not much, but that takes a little bit of your guide depth away because you're running on a slightly thicker braid. And as Dennis mentioned, you know, if you want to save a couple of cents, great. If you do get fluxed, I would cut pieces and throw it in a jar of lighter fluid or something to make sure that there's no residue left on it whatsoever. And if you go back to your first picture of your braid there.
This is Garth showing off one of his flux solder wick braided cars.
What I don't like the openness of the weave on a lot of these braids. There's no, you're not going to get any more contact from that whatsoever. And if you smush them to open the weave, you run the risk of the holes in the brush, if you will, picking up any little bits of crap that are flying around or sitting on the track. So you run the risk of having to clean your braids more frequently. I think braids should be straight and flat with a little curl on them. The little wavy bits on the front of your right-hand braid there, look, you know, pull them straight, get rid of those open weaves. And spend another 4 cents for 12 sets of braid and buy some half decent braid.
Garth, can you? So I don't do 143rd tuner cars like that. I haven't tried that. Is standard 132nd braid a little bit wide for those guides? I mean, do you want the narrower braid that you can get in solder wick, or
the it's the tension? Okay, the 132nd braid. It's the weight. You know, the 143rd cars have very low weight in the front ends. Okay, so the solder, non-flux solder wick works great. I mean, it's night and day difference between I'm talking about a stock braided car and
yes, stock braids often are quite heavy, specifically for wear and tear longevity. So a racing braid like from NSR or even the slotted, replacement racing braid is a lot thinner than your typical stock braid.
I agree with what Chris says about the in 1/32 scale. I wouldn't try it, but it made a world of difference in 1/43 for me anyway. So
if you want to hunt around, I don't think it's readily or it's hard to get, but SCX made some pro braid a few years back. And if you can find some online, it's wonderful stuff.
You mentioned the weight of the braid. Is it the physical weight of the solder wick braid that is heavier, and that's why you're doing it?
No. The weight of the car. There's no weight in the front end of the car, so the braid is very soft in it. So you don't get any, body jumping or anything. It runs better on the smaller car.
And back to a comment that was made early on. Do you run your cars with double braid?
No.
Okay,
No,
so
it's got a different guide on it and everything. And also it's on a 1/32 track, Chris. So I run
the tracks, it doesn't know where it's running.
1/43 car on a Carrera, big Carrera track.
That's fine.
Yeah. I'm not going to diss on the solder wick because I haven't tried it myself, but it does sound like you're comparing the solder wick to the heavy, stiffer braids that often come on a ready-to-run car, and you should definitely, pick up some NSR racing braid or some of the thinner, replacement braids and compare to that because it's not, not the same.
What's the braid? These are 1/43 what? Carreras or what are these cars, Garth?
Well, the Carrera or SCX cars, but they got customized guides in them, 3D printed guides in them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that the NSR racing braid and the slotted racing braid is definitely thinner than most of the. I haven't tried or seen every solder wick material around, but most of it that I've seen anyway is 20 to 30% thicker than the very thin racing braid from NSR. And the NSR braid and the SCX braid that I mentioned, the Pro braid, is really, really soft and flexible.
This solder wick that I've got here is 0.3 millimeters thick.
Right.
How thick is the racing braid?
I'd have to check on the.
And the width of it is.
NSR is 0.2. The NSR race braid that they sell is 0.2.
Right. So there is a difference then.
Yeah, don't compare it to stock braid for sure.
There are a lot of braids out there that are 0.2 and 0.3 millimeters. It's the softness, isn't it? It's the softness.
This stuff is really soft.
Yeah, now
whether that's the flux, I don't know.
I know Garth is a big slotted fan, and I know that slotted cars, the braids that come on ready to run slotteds are pretty heavy. Now, if you were to compare it to the braids that come on an MR slot car or even an NSR or some of the other brands, their stock braids are thinner than what you get on a stock ready to run slotted car. I don't know why okay, I do know why, for obviously for wear and tear, but it'd be nice if if they came with thinner braids, because sometimes the stock braids are just absolute springboards.
Well, true enough, but I mean, the intent of the car. I mean, they also come with magnets, so
true.
You really need to.
That's to say nothing.
Necessarily building them for performance club racers.
Yeah, they're designing for Ninco track basically, or maybe these days they're going to switch it for designing for Polycar track. But for the longest time, they've been designing them to run with magnets on Ninco track.
Right, take them out of the box and thrash them around until they stop. So thick braid works just fine.
Well, I got hands up. Big Den.
Yeah, just quickly, one or two of the guys in Hobart many years ago tried using the solder wick, as we called it, and you know, it didn't seem to work, you know, compared to what everyone else was doing. Pardon me. Curiously, it was probably the bloke who needed at least to, you know, save a few cents. But the other option for you know, well, I don't know what it's called, cheapo braid, but in the days when we didn't have any local outlets, people would use the copper shielding off shielded wire, and you know, strip the wire from out of the middle, and then flatten the shielding. So it was just something a bit different.
Yeah, when they're in a pinch and they need to get something that will function, but they can't.
That's pretty much what braid is nowadays, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff isn't made for slot cars. It's made for wiring. It just happens that it works for slot cars.
True.
Okay. So that's non-flux solder wick, right? I assume that's what no clean means. 0.098 inches wide. What's the thickness on that?
No, there's three different types of solder wick. There's non-fluxed, no clean, because that has a different flux in it. And then there's fluxed, obviously.
Interesting. All right, Mike. So
I just measured the sideways braid that I've gotten. It's 0.015 millimeters. Excuse me, 0.15 millimeters.
That's pretty thin.
Yeah.
That's thinner than Alan said the NSR braid was.
Yeah.
Alan?
So that's what I've been using, and it's worked pretty well.
I doubt if you can see that or not, but this is one of my 1/43 drag chassis. And this particular braid is 1/8 of an inch wide. It's 0.17 thick. And I got this from a place, being in the States here in Texas. I think it was called Magna Braid.
Yep.
And what's nice about this, as far as I'm concerned, is this particular braid is magnetic.
Like it's magnets.
Yeah. I have no contact problems whatsoever.
It sticks to metal.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
You'd be surprised. I'm pleased with it. Again, it's 1/8 inch wide, and the thickness is 0.17.
Yeah, I think you find the braid itself isn't magnetic.
The braid itself is magnetic, yes.
So it has been magnetized.
That's primarily what this gentleman sells. He's been selling various braid for years for slot car, for making slot car tracks.
So it's probably ferrous, but it's picked up some magnetic ability from rubbing on magnets or something.
It's copper plated and then tinned on the outside, but it's a steel core.
Right.
Yeah. Jim Honeycutt is the guy's name.
Honeycutt, yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
is that legal at Electric Dreams?
I guess.
Is he still in business? Because I thought people were having trouble getting that.
They've been having trouble getting the 1/4 inch wide stuff. Yeah, I know that. And maybe he stopped making it now. He's still in business with his raceway in San Antonio, but I don't know about the braid itself.
All right, Frank, you've got the last couple minutes. Get your hand up.
Sorry, Mick, take it down.
No worries. Hand is down.
We'll see.
Sorry.
No problem.
Quick measurement on NSR braids, Greg.
Yeah.
You interjected with, is that what they really are? And the advertising on them says 0.2, but actually they're 0.24 or thereabouts, 23, 24. So this is the NSR untinned race braid that I use. Now, you know, I mean, we could talk all day about whether the measurement here is right or not, because it's not, you know, it's just a caliper, it's just a digital caliper, but it is thicker than NSR tell us it is.
Do you have any of the slotted replacement racing braid on hand?
Never use it.
Okay.
This is the stuff, except no substitute.
Yeah.
This is the
I've
stuff.
got some slotted braid here I'm measuring right now.
I was gonna say I bought some recently.
0.3.
I couldn't get the NSR, and I was
Yeah.
surprised at how thin the slot it was. Not quite as thin as slotted. So yeah, 0.3 sounds about right.
0.27 actually.
Yeah, so not that far off the NSR.
Hang on, let me zero my calipers properly.
You might be able to knock a couple hundred.
Yeah, 0.26 now. 0.26 to 0.27.
Roll it out a little bit.
Oh yeah, if you flatten it, I could probably flatten it some more, but that's just as it comes off the roll.
Alan, I'm surprised you use the copper stuff and not the tin plated stuff.
For his regular racing, do you use that for the 24-hour?
Yeah, okay. Let me. What we do as a team is the guy that gets to build the car gets to choose what goes on the car, and if the car performs well, we just all go with it. So for the Le Mans, we used Graham's car, and Graham does use tin braids. When I build a car, I don't use tin braids, and the 3 or 4 of us all have a different approach, and we all do it our own way. And the acid test is, how does that perform on the day? Which car are we going to choose? So we all have our different things we do, and sometimes all those things come together, and sometimes they don't. So I'm not really convinced that tinned or not tinned braids. I don't think there's a significant difference, honestly.
I would tend to agree, but I'm actually fishing to find out whether anyone has an opinion on whether a copper tape track suits copper braid better, whether a nickel-plated steel rail in a plastic track suits a tinned braid better, or the other way around.
I would always build a digital card, an endurance digital card with tin braid. As we know, all the other quick cards. Just lasts longer.
Yeah, so for wear and tear. Yeah.
Yeah, purely for wear and tear.
See, what I could say to that, John, is
with
that tin braid hides the dirt better.
99% of the time. Sorry, Al?
I would tend that tinned braid hides the dirt better. Whereas if you've got those, the glowy copper stuff I use, you see it's dirty. You see what's happening to the braid. Whereas if it's tinned, you don't really see what's happening to the braid. I mean, I've got to tell you, I have firmly I have no opinion on it. I really don't care.
I mean, I've only, in my experience seeing cars that have been just run ragged, the ones that have the braids, I more often see cars with braids that are so worn they're barely sticking out of the guide anymore.
Right.
It's copper braid. But maybe that's just because the guys who run their cars so much to get to that point prefer copper braid. And so that's the only reason I'm seeing cars like that with copper braid. I have no empirical evidence to.
There is no empirical evidence to be had. There is none.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're at our 2-hour mark. I'm going to go ahead and hit the stop button. As always, come and join the live chat because it's a lot of fun. Come and contribute your HO knowledge, your 124th Speed Craze Moron knowledge, etc. And until then, we'll wave goodbye. Everybody wave. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.